Go live in the streets. Maybe the cold will teach you the value of real work. My laptop bag hit the snowbank with a dull thud. My father Richard stood in the doorway, his face purple against the white swirl of a Bozeman blizzard. Behind him, my mother Patricia didn't even look up from her phone. She was too busy scrolling through Zillow, probably admiring the fake listings my sister Victoria claimed she'd sold. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I just brushed the snow off the leather. Then I looked at him and smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a landlord realizing a tenant has just violated their lease. I turned and walked straight into the whiteout. Before I tell you exactly how I made them regret that night, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. Most people in a blizzard look for a shelter. I looked for a signal. I drove my beat-up sedan past the Motel 6, past the library straight to the private hangar at the Bozeman Yellowstone International Airport. I typed in the keypad code a sequence my parents thought was for a gym locker, and the heavy steel door slid open. Inside sat my mobile office, a Gulfstream G, 650. I climbed the steps, shook the snow off my coat, and sat in the leather captain's chair. The cabin was silent, smelling of conditioned air and expensive leather. I opened the laptop my father had just thrown into a snowbank. The screen flickered to life. I checked the terminal running in the background. While Richard was screaming at me about the value of real work, my algorithmic trading bot had executed 42 trades. Net profit for the last hour, $42,000. I didn't feel happy. Happiness is an emotion. This was just data. For 32 years, I had been the ghost in their house, the failure, the one who played on computers while my sister Victoria was the star real estate agent. They looked at me, but they didn't see me. Psychologists call it the cognitive dissonance of the mediocre. See, my parents had built their entire identity on a simple lie. Victoria was the winner and I was the loser. That was the structural load-bearing wall of their reality. If they admitted that I was successful, that the computer games were actually high-frequency fintech algorithms, their world would collapse. It would mean they were wrong. It would mean their massive financial and emotional investment in Victoria was a waste. To protect their egos, their brains literally rejected the evidence. They didn't ignore my success because it was invisible. They ignored it because acknowledging it would destroy them. They needed me to be small so they could feel big. So I let them. I'd played the role they cast me in. The broke, struggling daughter living in the basement. But every month for 5 years, I had set up a shell company, Alpine Management LLC. That company paid a consulting fee of $4,500 into my father's business account. They thought it was a lucky retainer from an old client. It was me. I was the only reason they could pay the mortgage on the house they just kicked me out of. I was the only reason Victoria could lease her Range Rover. They were living on a subscription to my guilt, and they didn't even know it. I looked at the bank transfer scheduled for tomorrow morning. Asset freeze. I typed the command and hit enter. The status bar turned red. Transfer canceled. I leaned back in the chair. The silence in the hangar was heavy, absolute. It felt like the air pressure dropping before a tornado. They wanted me to learn the value of money. Fine. I closed the laptop. Lesson 1 starts now. 2 weeks later, I was watching the sun rise over Main Street from the balcony of the presidential suite at the Kimpton Armory Hotel. I wasn't using my name. The reservation was under a holding company. To the staff, I was just a quiet consultant who tipped well and didn't want housekeeping. To the world, I was a ghost. But to my family, I was suddenly a criminal. My phone, which I'd left on silent for 14 days, was vibrating across the marble countertop. It wasn't a call. It was a barrage. I picked it up and scrolled through the thread. It read like a case study in panic. It started 3 days after I left. That was the day the Alpine Management transfer usually hit my father's account. My mother texted, "Tiffany, did you touch the Wi-Fi before you left? The business accounts are acting up. Answer me. Your father is trying to pay vendors and the system is showing insufficient funds. What did you do to the server?" I took a sip of espresso. The server was fine. The subsidy was gone. By day 7, the tone had shifted from annoyance to accusation. My father wrote, "We know you hacked the accounts. It's the only explanation. Put the money back or I'm calling the police." "You think this is a game? Victoria is crying because her commission check is late and we can't help her because someone messed up our liquidity." I actually laughed at that one. A dry, short sound. They truly believed I was hacking them. Their brains couldn't process the alternative. In their narrative, Richard was a real estate mogul and I was the tech-illiterate disappointment. It was easier for them to believe I had suddenly become a master cyber criminal than to admit they had been living on my charity for half a decade. And then there was the lie about Victoria. Commission check is late. I pulled up the multiple listing service database on my tablet. Victoria hadn't closed a sale in 6 months. There was no commission check coming. She was drowning in lease payments for a luxury car she couldn't afford and credit card debt from staging her lifestyle on Instagram. She wasn't crying because of a banking glitch. She was crying because the bank of mom and dad had just been foreclosed on, and she didn't know why. I didn't reply. I didn't defend myself. I just watched the desperation mutate into public performance. My mother, realizing private threats weren't working, had taken her show to the stage. I opened Facebook. There it was, posted 2 hours ago. A picture of Patricia and Victoria clinking champagne glasses from a year ago, looking radiant and filtered. The caption read, "It's heartbreaking when you nurture a child, give them a home, and they turn around and bite the hand that feeds them. Snakes in the grass eventually reveal themselves. Praying for my wayward daughter to find Jesus and a conscience." 74 likes. 30 comments from her Bridge Club friends saying things like, "Stay strong, Pat," and "Some kids just don't have gratitude." It was a masterclass in narrative control. She was publicly shaming me for biting the hand that feeds while privately frantically texting me because my hand had stopped feeding them. The hypocrisy wasn't surprising. It was structural. I put the phone down. Most people would have felt the urge to comment, to post the receipts, to scream the truth into the comment section, and burn the whole facade down right there. But I didn't. Anger is a volatile commodity. If you spend it in small bursts, it loses its value. You have to save it, compound it, and invest it where it yields the highest return. A Facebook comment war is a low-yield investment. I had something much bigger in mind. I opened my laptop and composed an email to the only person in my family who wasn't delusional, my cousin Ryan. He was a forensic accountant in Seattle, the boring cousin that Aunt Patricia made fun of because he didn't drive a Porsche. Subject: audit request. "Ryan, I need you to look into the books. Not just the business. Everything. I'm buying the debt, but I need to know exactly what I'm purchasing. Invoice me your standard rate plus 50% for speed." I hit send. They wanted to accuse me of hacking. Fine. I wouldn't hack them. I would audit them. And I would take everything. Forensic accounting is just an autopsy for money. You cut open the ledger and see what actually killed the patient. Ryan sat across from me in the suite's living area. He looked out of place in the opulence, clutching his battered briefcase like a shield. He was the cousin Aunt Patricia, called the boring one because he worked for the IRS for 5 years before going private. He didn't know about my money. Until 10 minutes ago. I'd slid a tablet across the coffee table, showing my liquid assets. He'd choked on his water. "Tiffany," he whispered, scrolling through the portfolio. This is institutional money. You're a whale." "I'm a ghost," I corrected, "and I need you to haunt my parents." I handed him the access keys to the Alpine management servers, the shell company I used to funnel money to them. But I also handed him something else: the authorization to dig into the public records and credit reports associated with my father's LLC. "I want to know why," I said, pouring him a glass of sparkling water. "I was sending them $54,000 a year tax-free. Dad's construction pension is another $40,000. Victoria claims she's closing million-dollar deals. Why did the asset freeze cause a meltdown in 3 days? They should have reserves." Ryan adjusted his glasses. The shock was fading, replaced by the hunter's focus. This was his element. "Give me 48 hours, he said. "You have 24. While Ryan dove into the digital paper trail, I went to work on the physical one. I opened a new file on my laptop. I didn't open it as Tiffany, the rejected daughter. I opened it as the managing director of North Peak Holdings, the anonymous trust that had purchased the non-performing note on my parents' mortgage 6 months ago. The bank had been happy to offload the risky debt. They didn't care who bought it. They just wanted the cash. My parents had received a letter saying their mortgage had been sold to a new servicer. They probably threw it in the trash without reading it, assuming it was just administrative noise. They didn't know that the new servicer was the daughter living in their basement. I had bought the debt as insurance. A safety net to keep a roof over their heads if Dad's gambling got bad again. Now it was ammunition. I typed the header, notice of default and intent to accelerate. The cursor blinked. For years I had been terrified of my father's voice, the way it boomed when he was angry, the way he could make me feel 2 feet tall just by looking at my shoes. But looking at the legal document, the fear evaporated. In the eyes of the law, he wasn't a scary patriarch. He was a distressed borrower, and I was the secured creditor. Relationships are messy. Contracts are absolute. I drafted the terms. They had missed the payment on the first of the month because I hadn't sent the money to cover it. According to the loan agreement, they were now in default. I added a clause demanding full inspection of the collateral. That meant I had the legal right to enter the house to assess the asset. I printed the document. The printer hummed a rhythmic, mechanical sound that felt more soothing than any lullaby. Ryan looked up from his laptop. His face was pale. "Tiff," he said, his voice tight, "you need to see this." "What is it? Is Dad gambling again?" "No," Ryan said. "It's worse. It's not just mismanagement, it's creative." He turned his screen toward me. "I tracked the Alpine payments. You thought they were going to the mortgage. They weren't. Your dad hasn't paid the principal on the house in 2 years. He's been paying interest only to keep the bank off his back." "Then where did my money go?" I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerously low register. Ryan pointed to a series of transfers, to a styling agency in LA, to a reputation management firm, to a leasing company for a Range Rover. He looked at me, his eyes wide behind the lenses. "They were spending your money to stage Victoria's career. They were buying her fake awards. They were paying for bot farms to like her Instagram posts. Tiff, they weren't just broke. They were investing everything you gave them into a Ponzi scheme called Victoria's Success." I looked at the numbers. It was a factory of lies powered by my labor. "Keep digging," I said. "I want the kill shot." Ryan hesitated. "There's one more thing. A withdrawal from an account I didn't recognize. A custodial account. It had your name on the original paperwork from Grandma." My blood went cold. Grandma's college fund. I hadn't touched it. I'd forgotten it existed. "How much?" $28,500, Ryan said. "Withdrawn 3 weeks ago. Signature looks shaky." "And where did it go?" Ryan clicked a file. "That's the part that's going to send someone to prison." "To a private settlement account," Ryan said, turning the screen so I could see the wire transfer details. "Beneficiary, the Davis Family Trust." I frowned. "Who are the Davises?" "I didn't know either," Ryan said, pulling up a new document. So I cross-referenced Victoria's closed listings. The Davises bought a condo from her 6 months ago, a luxury flip in downtown Bozeman. 2 weeks after closing, they threatened to sue. Not just for a refund. They were going to the Real Estate Commission to have Victoria's license revoked for fraud. Fraud. "She sold them a unit with active structural water damage," Ryan said, his voice shaking with the weight of what he was seeing. "She knew about it. There was an inspection report from a previous buyer that she hid. She buried it to close the deal and get her commission." The picture snapped into focus like a high-resolution image. Victoria hadn't just failed. She had cheated. She had committed real estate fraud to keep up the appearance of being a top producer. And when she got caught, she didn't face the consequences. She went to Mommy. And Mommy didn't have the cash to bail her out because I had frozen the Alpine account. So Patricia did the only thing she could think of. She forged my signature on a dormant custodial account money my grandmother left for my education and used it to pay hush money to the Davises. They stole my inheritance to bribe a family into silence, all to protect Victoria's fake career. Ryan took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. He looked sick. "Tiff, this is a felony. Identity theft, wire fraud, grand larceny. If you report this, your mother goes to federal prison. Victoria loses her license forever." He looked at me expecting the explosion. He expected me to scream, to cry, to throw the expensive vase on the mantel. That's what people do when they realize their own mother sacrificed them on the altar of their sibling's ego. But I didn't feel rage. I felt a strange, icy calm settling over me. It was the feeling of a complex equation finally balancing out to zero. I looked at the number on the screen, $28,500. In the corporate world, we have a term for this. It's called a termination fee. If you want to break a contract early, you pay a penalty. You write a check to dissolve the obligation. It hurts to pay it, but once the check clears, you are legally free. You walk away, no more meetings, no more liability. For 32 years, I had been paying an emotional tax to be part of this family. I had paid with my self-esteem. I had paid with my silence. I had paid with the secret monthly transfers. But this theft, this was the final invoice. "It's the silent tax," I said softly. Ryan looked up. "What?" "The tax of the scapegoat," I said, staring at the forged signature on the screen. "They took 28 grand. That's a lot of money. But think about what I'm buying with it, Ryan." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the snow-covered mountains. If I paid a lawyer to get them out of my life, it would cost this much. If I paid a therapist to help me stop seeking their validation, it would cost this much. They just saved me the trouble. They processed the transaction themselves. I turned back to him. They didn't steal from me. They handed me a receipt that says I never owe them anything ever again. Not a phone call, not a Christmas card, not a single moment of my time. So, you're not going to call the police? Ryan asked. No, I said. Police are for criminals. My parents aren't criminals. They're just bad investments. I picked up the leather binder containing the foreclosure notice and the audit report. I added the printout of the wire fraud to the stack. I'm not sending them to jail, Ryan. That's too easy. In jail, they get 3 meals a day and they get to play the victim. They get to tell everyone how their cruel daughter put them there. I snapped the binder shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the quiet suite. I'm going to do something much worse. I'm going to treat them exactly like they treated me. Like a business transaction that has expired. I checked my watch. 5 p.m. Pack up the gear, I said. I just sent them an invite to dinner at the Copper Saddle. I told them I have a proposal to fix their cash flow problem. Ryan looked terrified. You're going to feed them? No, I said, heading for the door. I'm going to serve them. The Copper Saddle is the kind of place where the menus don't have prices and the air smells like aged mahogany and Wagyu beef. It's where Bozeman's real power brokers eat. I arrived 10 minutes early. I ordered a sparkling water with lime. I sat with my back to the wall, the leather binder resting on the table like a loaded weapon. They arrived 15 minutes late. It was a power move, or at least they thought it was. Richard walked in first chest, puffed out wearing his business negotiation blazer. Patricia followed, scanning the room to see who was watching her entrance, and trailing behind them was Victoria. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere coat that I knew she couldn't afford. As she sat down, I saw the white tag tucked discreetly inside the sleeve. She was planning to return it tomorrow. They slid into the booth. They didn't look scared. They looked smug. They thought I was there to surrender. In their minds, I was the daughter who had thrown a tantrum, gotten cold, and realized I couldn't survive without them. They thought the proposal I mentioned was a plea for forgiveness. Well, Richard said, picking up the wine list without looking at me, I see you've finally come to your senses. He signaled the sommelier, bottle of the 2015 Cabernet, and we'll start with the seafood tower. He looked at me, a smirk playing on his lips. Don't worry, Tiffany. We're willing to be the bigger people here. We know you've been emotional. Living in a car does that to people. Patricia chimed in, her voice dripping with that fake church lady sweetness. We're prepared to overlook the disruption you caused to the business accounts, sweetie. Just give your father the new passwords. Apologize to your sister for the stress you caused her, and you can come home. The basement is still there. Victoria didn't speak. She just glared at me, checking her phone, probably waiting for the notification that her commission had finally cleared so she could pay off the coat. I didn't say a word. I just watched them order. They racked up $400 in appetizers alone. They were eating on credit. They didn't have banking on a bailout that didn't exist. When the waiter finally cleared the plates, Richard leaned back, picking his teeth. All right, he said. Let's have it. What's this proposal? And make it quick. Victoria has showings tomorrow. I took a sip of my water. I set the glass down. My proposal, I said, my voice soft, level, and devoid of any warmth, is a timeline. I slid the leather binder across the table. Richard frowned. He opened it. The first page wasn't an apology. It was the notice of default and intent to accelerate. It was the legal document notifying him that North Peak Holdings, my trust, was calling the loan due immediately. What is this? Richard laughed, a nervous barking sound. North Peak. My mortgage is with the bank. This is some kind of scam. Turn the page, I said. He flipped it. The second document was the forensic audit report. It showed the wire transfer of $28,500 from my grandmother's custodial account to the Davis Family Trust. It was highlighted in yellow. Patricia gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. She recognized the account number. And the next one, I said. Richard turned the page. His face went from red to a terrifying shade of gray. It was my 2024 tax return. The line for adjusted gross income was circled in red ink. $19,542,000. The silence that fell over the table was absolute. It was the sound of oxygen leaving a room. The hum of the restaurant seemed to vanish. Victoria leaned over to look at the number, her eyes widening until I thought they might snap. You, Richard stammered. You. This is fake. It's filed with the IRS, I said. Unlike your business expenses. I leaned forward. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. For 2 weeks, you've been accusing me of hacking your accounts. You told everyone I sabotaged your livelihood. You're wrong. I pointed a manicured finger at the binder. I didn't hack your accounts, Dad. I was your account. Every mortgage payment, every lease payment for Victoria's car, every lucky consulting fee. That was me. That was my charity keeping you afloat because you are incapable of generating actual wealth. I looked at Patricia. She was trembling. And you, I said. You stole my inheritance to cover up Victoria's fraud. That's a felony, Mom. Grand larceny. I could send you to prison tonight with a single phone call. Patricia started to cry. Tiffany, please. We're family. No, I said. We're not. Family doesn't steal. Parasites steal. And I just fumigated the house. I stood up. The movement was sharp final. You have 30 days to vacate the property. It belongs to North Peak Holdings now, which means it belongs to me. If you aren't out by the 1st, the sheriff will remove you. Tiffany, Victoria shrieked, grabbing my arm. You can't do this. I have a reputation in this town. I pulled my arm away as if she were contagious. You don't have a reputation, Victoria. You have a tab. And I'm done paying it. I pulled a $100 bill from my purse and dropped it on the table next to my untouched water. That covers my water and the tip, I said. I looked at the three of them one last time. The seafood tower, the expensive wine, the crushing debt, the lies. They looked small. They looked like strangers. Enjoy the dinner, I said. You're paying for this one. I walked out of the restaurant and into the cold night air. I didn't look back. I didn't need to see them panic when the bill arrived. I already knew exactly what bankruptcy looked like. The fallout didn't happen all at once. It was a slow, grinding collapse like a glacier calving into the sea. Victoria filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy 3 weeks later. She tried to keep it quiet, but in a town like Bozeman, bankruptcy is as public as a billboard. The Range Rover was repossessed from the driveway of the house she was squatting in. The luxury real estate agent was suddenly driving a 10-year-old Honda Civic and working reception at a ski lodge. My parents moved into a 2-bedroom rental condo on the edge of town. It wasn't a bad place, really. It was perfectly adequate. But for people who had built their entire identity on appearing wealthy adequate was a fate worse than death. I didn't stick around to watch. I didn't drive by to gloat. I bought a ranch deep in the Bridger Mountains. 80 acres of pine trees and untouched snow accessible only by a private road that I kept plowed. I installed a dedicated fiber optic line, built a server room in the basement, and set up my desk facing the North Peak. It's quiet here. The kind of quiet that rings in your ears. My phone still lights up sometimes with blocked voicemails. I don't listen to them. I don't need to know if they are angry or sorry or begging. A lot of people ask me why I didn't try to fix them. Why, after I had won, didn't I use my money to force them into therapy or pay off their debts on the condition that they treat me better? It comes down to a concept I call the vacuum of validation. See, I realize that you cannot fill a cup that refuses to be emptied. My parents were committed to misunderstanding me. Their entire worldview required me to be the failure so that they could feel successful. If I had bailed them out, even with conditions, I would have just been validating their delusion. I would have been proving that I was still seeking their approval. The only way to win was to remove myself completely. To create a vacuum where my presence used to be. When you stop arguing, stop explaining, and stop paying, you force people to sit in the silence of their own choices. That silence is louder than any scream. That absence is heavier than any presence. My revenge wasn't the foreclosure. It wasn't the dinner bill. My revenge is this view. I looked out the window. The snow was falling again, thick and heavy, blanketing the world in white. It covered the tracks, the roads, the noise. It erased everything, until there was nothing left but the clean, sharp lines of the mountains. I turned back to my monitors. The trading algorithms were running smoothly green numbers cascading down the black screens like digital rain. I didn't feel happy. Happiness is fleeting. I felt clean. If you are still listening, I want you to hear this. Stop arguing with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Stop trying to buy respect from people who only value your utility. Take your energy, take your skills, and go build your own empire in the dark. Let them laugh at your computer games. Let them underestimate you. Because the quietest person in the room is usually the one holding the keys to the building.